While conducting an interview, researchers are also interested in recording or taking notes. So how do these things affect the course of interview, and if these affect, then how to take care of such situations?
Clearly, it depends on a number of things, and I'll illustrate it with just one or two examples. One, how sensitive, within inverted commas, the information you are seeking as a researcher appears to the respondents. Now, that again will vary a great deal from field to field, because these are socially and politically constituted. Something which might seem to be very easy for one respondent to answer, may not be easy at all for the other respondent. Right? And how do you sift through these sensitivities, which indeed have their structural correlates? Economic structure, social structure, political structure, and so on. Right? So that's one kind of very, very important consideration that we have to keep in mind. In general, it is extremely important that there is at least adequate trust between the respondent and the interviewer. If that is not there, then it becomes extremely difficult for any such inquiry to generate valuable information and so on. Right? So, there are lots of issues, but if you're looking at some large kind of obvious considerations going beyond what are methodologically sensitive issues, okay, in terms of the subject who constitute the field of inquiry, in terms of the subjective responses and sensitivities, etc. There, it is indeed critical to ask, going back to your earlier question, what can be easily gleaned through, broadly casting the net of inquiry in a quantitative manner, and contrast that with the net that you wish to cast to capture the underlying qualitative considerations. Right? So these issues will then inform how the researcher proceeds. See, specifically when it comes to what you asked, taking notes, recording, etc., in many contexts and many settings, there is indeed a distance which gets created in terms of what could be a space which can be considered a sort of a reasonably hospitable terrain, yeah. As soon as you flash your notebook, as you start recording and so on. So one has to very, very careful about it. And the most important consideration there is, if there is at least a critical minimum trust, and it has been explained to the respondents that yes, indeed, this is something which would not be sort of within quotes used in any untoward manner, then the respondent feels comfortable. But there are whole range of accounts from field interviews where it has been reported that this does create a lot of hesitation and difficulty, right, in the absence of that necessary trust.
Sir, it is possible that answers by any expert have its biases, which may overestimate or underestimate the situation under consideration. So how to filter that biases?
While selecting the experts, it's extremely important to make sure that the domain knowledge is one which gets factored in its entirety as regards what the expert has to share. Now, there is no expert in the world who would not have a perspective. The important point is to distinguish very clearly, very sharply between bias and perspective. Any expert will tell you that there are these views and a whole range of views. All these views you need to engage with, you need to be aware of, but I would also like to share my own preferred perspective as regards this particular theme. So think of any important research question. There are many angles to it. What the expert has to do is to ensure a good conversations across the entire spectrum of different angles, different perspectives, but must also clearly be able to sort of state in a reasonably reasoned manner if indeed a particular perspective has been privileged, why that has been privileged. That is a very elementary and necessary part of any expert conversation, right? And that should certainly influence the selection of experts in the first place, right? There are some who may be very good in terms of their domain knowledge, but if they are not really able to go that distance in terms of giving you a sense of the spectrum, then there is a serious problem, right? Indeed, if you pick up any such expert, you need to drop that expert from your inquiry as soon as possible, who is not able to give a good sense of the spectrum.
Thank you, sir, for giving us time.